Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is here in the U.S. for the third time since Russia launched its full-scale invasion in February of 2022. He'll meet with President Biden at the White House to discuss his country's needs on the battlefield and the importance of America's continued support. President Biden has proposed just over $60 billion in new wartime funding for Ukraine as part of a national security package. But Republicans say that foreign aid must be tied to additional funding and policy changes at the southern border. Joining us from Moscow, NBC News Chief International Correspondent Keir Simmons. Keir, how is this new visit from Zelensky playing in Russia?
Well, Mika, this is an absolutely pivotal week in the Ukraine and Russia story. President Zelensky's trip to Washington is vital in the ways that you laid out, vital in his efforts to persuade the US to continue to fund Ukraine's military efforts. And then later in the week in Europe, the Europeans will decide whether to proceed with accession for Ukraine to the European Union, despite the objections so far of Viktor Orbán in Hungary. So a very important week for Zelensky and also for President Putin, who this week will hold for the first time in years a question and answer session with journalists, the Russian public, combining that with the traditional radio phone-in that he's held. That you'll remember it, that kind of news conference that goes on for hour after hour. He's going to do that again on Thursday. And what we heard from the Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, today is that the Russian government is watching events there in Washington very closely, trying to argue that it doesn't matter whether the US would fund Ukraine, or at least it doesn't matter in the sense he says, he's been briefing journalists, that it will just be bad money after good money, if you like. That's Russia's argument. And then we also heard from our own Peter Alexander today, a briefing from the National Security Council, talking about that Russia continues to push an offensive since October that the National Security Council spokesperson saying has lost Russia 13,000 troops, and suggesting that Russia's maximalist aims remain to try and take all of Ukraine. I think that's interesting. I think that there is going to be a question this week about what we hear from President Putin, whether the Kremlin is watching events in Israel and Gaza, watching events there in Washington, whether the Kremlin is wondering whether the mood is changing, if you like, whether it is going to try to reach for some kind of a freeze in this conflict, some kind of an agreement, if you like, that the territory held by both sides should remain the same. Now, the issue is, of course, that clearly President Zelensky is unlikely to accept that. And I think what you're going to hear from President Zelensky during his trip there in Washington is that in the end, you can't trust Russia. In the end, Russia's aims are going to be to continue to try and put pressure on Ukraine territory in terms of territory, and that is why the US should continue to support Ukraine financially.
Keir, Zelensky's visit, of course, comes as Vladimir Putin announcing he will seek another term and run for re-election on March 17th, putting that in quotes. And that comes as one of his opposition rivals, imprisoned activist Alexei Navalny, has reportedly been moved out of the penal colony where he was serving, according to his supporters, who say his whereabouts are unknown. What more can you tell us about Alexei Navalny?
Yeah, it's a mystery. Not clear what's happened and why. He was supposed to be present for a court hearing today. He wasn't there. His name has been removed from the list of prisoners at the prison where he's being held. His spokesperson saying that he's now been missing for 7 days. There is some suggestion that he had some kind of an illness at some stage, some recent stage. But it may also be, and I'm speculating, but everybody is, it may also be that he is being, kind of moved out of the spotlight for this crucial week, particularly as we prepare for President Putin to take on this hours-long question and answer session later in the week. So listen, it's completely feasible that Navalny will just reappear at some stage, and that he'll just have been moved from one prison to another, for example. But it is a mystery right now.
NBC's Keir Simmons reporting from Moscow. Thank you very much. Willie?
So Jonathan Lemire with President Zelensky in Washington right now, going door to door, reminding members of Congress, of course, the president, he needs the United States. Without the United States, they lose the war. There is talk, as we were speaking with Admiral Stavridis a little bit earlier, the counteroffensive did not go as planned. It did not work. They didn't push into new territory. So perhaps a rethinking of strategy as they think about how much money to give.
First, we should note, as questions persist about Navalny's whereabouts, that the U.S. just had an offer rejected by the Russians to free Evan Gershkovich and Paul Whelan, Americans being held there in Russia. And as far as this counteroffensive goes, you're right. It was a failure. It needs to be said as such that the Ukrainians did not make much in the way of territory. The Russians had really dug in. They were defending their territory, the land they had seized illegally from Ukraine. And already there were questions about how long the Allies would be able to support this effort. How much pressure would they then put on Kyiv to head to the negotiating table? Now, Zelensky has said he doesn't want to do that. He wants to fight to reclaim all of that territory. U.S. officials say that's unrealistic. They're not going to get all of it back. But Zelensky arrives in Washington now to try to convince Congress to open up the purse strings again for Ukraine, but it seems very unlikely to happen, at least this week. Senators from both sides of the aisle have signaled openly that they don't think a deal can get done these days because of what Republicans want, connecting it to border security. This probably pushes into the new year. It gets that much more complicated because there's going to be a debate in Congress about keeping the government funding, keeping the government open with that spending bill. So this is only going to get harder, and we have heard President Biden since the first day of the invasion say that the U.S. will stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes. But now, through no fault of this president, that's really being tested. And it does seem that if the U.S. is not able to supply aid soon, it will have disastrous consequences for Ukraine on the battlefield and may prompt other European allies to question their own support, saying, well, if the United States is not involved, why should we?
And President Biden saying clearly again yesterday, Vladimir Putin cannot win this war and needs Congress's help to continue to back. We'll see where that goes.